I'm going. Hey, good morning, Baltimore. I'm seated out in front of City Hall where just a few minutes ago, the Board of Estimates approved yet another $1.3 million for grass cutting in the city. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not opposed to grass cutting. I know that there's plenty of green spaces in our city that need to be cut. So trust me, I'm not opposed to that. The reason that I'm coming to you this morning is that just in less than a month, the city has approved about $4.5 million for grass cutting. So let me ask you some questions this morning. Do you think any of that $4.5 million went to a black firm? Do you think that $4.5 million went to a women-owned firm? A woman-owned firm? Do you think that $4.5 million went to a local firm? If you said no, you would be correct this morning. But guess what? During the time when we spent $4.5 million on a service that could have been easily done by any level of worker in our city, in that same period of time, we've had 35 murders in the city. Now, did the fact that this firm got that $4.5 million cause that murder? No. Let me make the connection for you. If we don't start addressing the economic issue in our city, if we don't prioritize using city resources to get people working in the city, we are always going to have a public safety crisis. How many local firms could that $4.5 million support it? How many African American firms could that $4.5 million support it? How many African American males in East and West Baltimore could have or should have been employed from that $4.5 million? How many lives could we have saved with that $4.5 million? We've got to wake up, Baltimore. Our public safety crisis isn't across the street from me in Central District headquarters for the police department. Our public safety crisis is behind me in City Hall in the way that we deploy resources in this town. If we don't prioritize creating jobs specifically for African American males in this city, we are always going to have a public safety crisis. The issues that are happening on our street are not. Now there's some guys, there's some women out there that just, it doesn't matter what kind of job you bring them, they're going to do bad. They have evil intentions. But there are a lot of individuals out there that are just looking for an opportunity. And so we've got to make certain that the resources that we have in city government yield for us a win-win-win. What do I mean when I say that? First, it's got to provide the service that we're trying to provide for our city. So that's the initial. But then it's got to support local businesses in our city. And then lastly, it's got to support businesses that prioritize hiring local workers. That's $4.5 million to cut grass. Doesn't require any college degree, doesn't require any high-level training. We could have grabbed squeegee kids off the corner and paid some of them with that $4.5 million. We could have reached out and grabbed some of the brothers on the street and got them jobs with $4.5 million. Hey, even if we didn't decide to do that, we could prevent individuals in our own city agencies from possibly being laid off with that $4.5 million. We've got to do a better job of resources. We've got to do a better job of how we allocate resources. $4.5 million. For those who tune in, I want you to tune in later because $4.5 million is only half the story. Later this afternoon, I'm going to tell you where the $65 million that the city anticipates spending for COVID-19 emergency relief is going to be spent. I imagine you can guess right now that there aren't many minority firms on that list. There aren't many women-owned firms on that list. There are some local firms on that list, but the city anticipates spending about $65 million before September on COVID-19 emergency response. And even with those resources, the finance director says he doesn't have an obligation to direct that money to MBEs, WBEs, or local firms. Our problems aren't in the streets of East and West Baltimore. Our problems are right here in city government, right at the Board of Estimates. Tune in later. I'm going to tell you where the $65 million are so that we can get some local hires, we can get some MBEs working, we can get some WBEs working. We've got to do better. We can do better, but we will never do better if we don't have the right leadership in place. God bless y'all. Thank y'all for tuning in. $4.5 million to cut grass. No local hires, limited local hires, limited minority participation, limited women business entrepreneurs in this. We've got to do better. God bless you. Take care.